Hello there. This is part 3 in a series of short sermons which are intended to intrigue you, to stimulate your mind, to stir your nerves just a little bit, so that you could start thinking about some novel terminology as you articulate who you are as a believer. Furthermore, I really want us to start thinking of ourselves as people who live under the jurisdiction of the kingdom of God. And that's a whole term that we'll come to in another video. But today I really want us to think about the idea of righteousness. Now this may be a buzzword that we've heard throughout our lives. If we've been somebody who's grown up in church, we may have heard it in church and sort of those circles, but a lot of times its sort of meaning can be lost. So today I want us to open up our scriptures to Exodus 18. And in this passage we see Moses judging the people. But I don't want us to get lost in the idea of judging the people, because this is merely the medium for which this idea is manifested. But the real idea of righteousness is sort of this idea that there's a lot of things out in the cosmos. There's a lot of different variables in reality. And sometimes these variables are in a good order with one another. So you've got something over here, you've got something over there. And the question is, are these different variables, these different things throughout the cosmos in an appropriate relationship with one another? Is there order in the chaos? And this is something that is very important to the story of the people of God and the active character of anyone who is living as somebody under the jurisdiction of the kingdom of God. So if we're created in God's image and God is sort of the creator, we must remember that God came to give order to the chaos. And this really in and of itself is the most inherent and sincere form of righteousness, because it's all the different things in the world are out of order with one another, and suddenly they're all coming together in a meaningful and pertinent way. And a lot of times we think about righteousness and sort of as a personal attribute of someone, or maybe an act is righteous. But I really want us to think about this in a much more broad understanding. For instance, if I came in and my shirt was on backwards, and you could clearly see that it was on backwards, or perhaps it was even on backwards and inside out and you could see the tag, this would be something that was unrighteous. The shirt was not in a proper relationship with my person. If this table over next to me, if it were upside down and the legs were poking up, that would be unright with the rest of the room. It would be out of the order. The things would just sort of be in a little bit of a state of chaos. This really is the idea of righteousness, when all the different things throughout reality are in a proper order with one another, when the perspective of one thing is correct with the perspective of another. And now I want us to take a few moments and just turn to this passage here in Exodus 18. And I'm just going to read verse 21. And this is a passage that is sort of Moses. He's working with other people, he's leading the people. But not only is he judging the people, but he is actually representing the character of God to people. He is truly being that statue of God for the world to see, for the world to see the marker of the one who is over them. And it's so important for us to realize that Moses is not just doing some sort of adjudication process, but he's really working with the people so that they can see the will of God, they can see the nature of God, and they can even see the call in their own personal lives. Well, so in this passage, we see Moses is doing this, and his father-in-law comes and says, it's not such a good thing that you as one individual are doing this, and there's all sorts of problems that can come with this. And we can talk about that at another time if we need to, but just know that there's always problems when one person has a lot of power concentrated upon them, and they are tasked with sort of the role of representing God. This is something that is a collective responsibility of humanity, not necessarily of one person. So he's doing all of this, and his father-in-law says, this is not good, you should find other people to help you with all of this. And in verse 21 we see the crux of such an important idea for us who live under the kingdom of God. And it says, you should look for capable men among all the people, those who fear God, who are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Now you see this verse translated very different ways in the different translations, but personally, I like to spend a lot of time in the Septuagint. You see something so interesting there. The first word we get there is fearing God. It's also sometimes translated as those who worship God. God worshiping, it appears differently in the places that this word is used. But the second word that is there is so important. Simply, nice and clean, the word for righteousness. In other words, people who live under sort of a proper relationship with God, and then also people who are interested in putting things in their proper order. They go out into the cosmos and they see one thing and they see another thing and they say, this needs to be put in a proper order with that thing over there. And now this isn't some sort of idea of social engineering or anything that just goes out and manipulates the world. It's simply using our personal responsibility to ensure that the different things in the world are not in a state of chaos, but they're in a state of order. They're in a state where they can prosper, where they can contribute to one another, where things can work together in a meaningful way. And the last word that we get there, the hating of dishonest gain, is really, to put it simply, it's the destroying of the chaos. It's being proactive in doing away with the things which cause destruction in the world, doing away with the things which cause a curse for the humanity, and putting things back in proper order. So today, I just want to conclude with the thought of think about using righteousness in your everyday vocabulary. It's the same word for equity, it's the same word for justice when you go to the ancient world, but most importantly, it's the word for putting the different things in reality into a proper order with one another. And I thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.